700 islands wrapped in turquoise dreams. Every voice matters, every soul redeems. With a heartbeat broadcasting truth across the waves. Information, liberation. This is how a nation stays. From Andros to Abaco, a love at a Grand Bahamas shore. We're reaching every family, knocking on every door. Not just talking policy, baby, we're changing lives. When social service meets compassion, that's when hope survives. We speak your language, we know your name. Through the airwaves, through the struggle, we remain. Building bridges over water, building trust on solid ground. The Bahamas ministry, where love and justice can be found. We are islands of care in an ocean of need. Planting faith like coconut trees, watching future succeed, watching them grow. Broadcasting truth, serving hearts, making sure you're heard. The Bahamas rises together when we honor every word. This is more than ministry, baby. This is sacred ground. When social services meet heaven, that's when grace abounds.
I want us to consider this. Greatness is not determined by size. The Bahamas is the greatest little nation in the world. And sometimes the evidence is there and we seem not to connect the dots. We're talking about climate change today because it really impacts all of us. When we talk about social services, a lot of the Bahamians are on the line for help because of natural disasters. And as I interact with some of our professionals here in the Bahamas, it reminds me that we have leaders in all parts of our country, all sectors of our country, who are really unsung. And I look forward to the day that we can have this culture of honor. Because the impact that the Bahamas is having, led by the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the Right Honorable Philip Brave Davis, who has used the platform of diplomacy to confront climate change, really reminds me of back in 1985 when Sir Lyndon confronted apartheid. What does that have to do with all of this? Jeffrey Simmons, who we're going to meet for a minute, and the director of Backswin, made an observation. Mangroves are almost ready to be picked in February. Do you all remember, those of you old enough? Mangoes didn't come out until the summer. It's all the impact of climate change. So changes are being made. We have to make change a friend and not an enemy. Equally as impressive is Rochelle Newbold, who serves out of the office of the Prime Minister. And let's meet them because we are hosting for the first time in the region the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's a very critical time, and I just want to welcome you all so much. I am so impressed. I know I'm going off notes for what we're going to talk about today, but that's all right. I just want to take this time to honor both of you. Rochelle Newbold, you look so young to be so smart. You don't know what to say to that, eh?
No. I'll leave it up to my genes.
Yes, that's you. Leave it up to your genes. But listen, why is climate change important?
Well, Climate change is a very important aspect of what's happening to the planet in its totality. It's not individualized to a country in terms of the impacts because it has no master, it has no preference. It just does what it does. But for small island developing states like the Bahamas, the impact is more than enormous, a tremendous weight that we as a small nation has to bear. We contribute less than 0.01% that of the greenhouse gases that contribute to it, but we 110% experience the impacts associated with it. It affects all aspects of our economy, our educational platforms, our livelihoods in every which way. It knows no respecter of persons. We know this most deliberately and most clearly when we talk about the issues of hurricanes. Everybody associates climate change with hurricanes, and Hurricane Dorian was the turning point for this nation. I don't think before Hurricane Dorian, I don't think climate change was as an abundant vocabulary word in the things that we say and we do. But ever since then, it has been at the forefront of all that we do. But I also want Bahamians to appreciate and to understand that climate change also has what we call slow onset impacts. These would be things like the heat that we experience on a daily basis, the drought that we see in the southern islands, the lack of water and the scarcity of water that is being experienced throughout the farming communities. These are all implications of climate change. The way the soil is changing now, becoming much more salt, having a higher salt content. These are all impacts from climate change. The way our fruits are not responding because of the heat. This has food security issues. It has energy issues that we're trying to address, the government is trying to address, and it also has educational issues. And you say, how? How can education be affected by climate change? Because we need now to educate and make aware this next generation, this next wave of Bahamians, to understand that the way they will go out into the business world, the way they would interact globally, has to be in relation to what is needed, and what is needed has to respond to the impacts of climate change.
Let's speak to Jeffrey Simmons. How would you describe the urgency of Bahamians to not only respond to the changes, how do we respond to the changes, and what difference is Baxford making in our ability to make changes?
Well, like Rochelle said, we are responsible for a very small amount of the greenhouse gas emissions here in the Bahamas, or in most small island states, not only in the Bahamas. But at the same time, we can contribute, we can lend our contribution to help to cut down on these greenhouse gas emissions. And some of the things we do, simple things we do, even some of the things in our household that we can do, like watch the way, monitor the way we use our energy, our electricity, water, make sure there's no wastage and all of those things like that. But Baxman, we are right now implementing a project, okay, where we look at carbon emissions. We look at the aircrafts really in our airspace. The Bahamas have a very large airspace, as you know. And we have a lot of aircrafts traversing through our airspace. Baxman is actually producing a 3D image that actually can give to pilots as they traverse our airspace. It would give them a good idea of what the weather is like. This is where we all started from, really, and what the weather is like in our airspace throughout as aircraft move, and how they can avoid turbulences and heavy thunderstorms, especially in the summer months. By doing this, the aircrafts now will be able to move more efficient through our airspace, and it will cut down on the carbon emission by the aircraft. If you know the planes that fly through our airspace, there are a lot of carbon emissions going on. So through the project that Baxman is actually doing, we'll be able to cut down on our carbon emission as aircraft transfer through our airspace. And it will give us more, and it can add a lot of other things to it, but when it comes to climate change, this is how Baxman would be actually contributing to lessening the amount of carbon emissions from this small nation here on planet Earth.
Baxman, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, hosting a working group here in the Bahamas. It's the first time. And when we come back, we're going to see why that is important. What is the goal? Because the Prime Minister has been very aggressive on diplomatic platforms, as I have said, in really pushing the case for the small developing states. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion.
You can now stay in tune with all things social services on any one of our social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, missed any of our Taking Social Services to the People programs? No worries. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Bahamas Heartbeat, to watch all of our programs and special content. Social services is the heartbeat of the nation, taking our clients from dependency to self-sufficiency to economic empowerment.
Have you heard about the Promise Unit? The Department of Social Services provides food assistance, housing assistance, uniform assistance, burial assistance, and financial assistance. Promise makes it easy. You can log on via cell phone, your computer, or your tablet. Sign up today at promise.gov.bs. Once you've registered and created a profile, you can call the Promise Customer Contact Center and speak with someone about any inquiries at 1-242-4-PROMISE. That's 242-477-6647.
200 to 300 people are here in the Bahamas because we are hosting this very important working group. We have one of our outstanding Bahamians here who is playing a very critical role in the whole working group. Why is this working group so important?
Well, you would see globally that you'd have things where people have this back and forth debate. Climate deniers, there is no climate change. Everything is just a seasonal thing that the earth is normally going through. So in order to take away these personal views about things, they look to science, they look to the data, they see how things are changing, they plot it, they follow it, and they come up with a result. So every year, the IPCC is charged with creating these working groups to give the world the facts as they are, unadulterated, unimpressed by political change or anything like that. The Bahamas is proud to host this second working group that's meeting here this week with all 275 scientists to discuss the impacts of climate change. And we are also proud to have one of our very own, Dr. Adele Thomas, being part of that authorship and also as vice chair of one of the sectorial group's chapters. I think that speaks volumes for us as women, as well as it does for us as small island developing states. No longer will we sit back and have others discuss for us the impacts and the outcomes, but we will be a part of that discussion. We'll be at the table and we'll be making sure that it is accurately reflected and it's important to the needs and addresses the needs that we have.
One of the first assignments that the Prime Minister had when he came in during the first time in 2021, he spoke at the CEO Summit of the Americas, and he made the comment and observation that there are summits and meetings all over the place. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, a little liberty here. A lot of smiles, a lot of good intentions, but it's time to get to work. What is going to separate what we're doing here in the Bahamas with the smiles and the good intentions? And his admonition is, and you know what? I want us to go and listen to it for a minute, but when we are finished, I want you to respond. The smiles, the good intentions, but we need to work. What is going to separate this conference here in the Bahamas?
On the one hand, it is wonderful to be here together. On the other hand, we shouldn't congratulate ourselves just for showing up. I'm here to represent my beautiful country, the Bahamas, and I do so with an enormous sense of urgency. The Bahamas has the distinction of consistently showing up in the top rankings of countries most vulnerable to climate change. When hurricanes come, as they do with increasing frequency and intensity, they make headlines in your countries for a few days. But in our home, we are left with the grief and devastation, with entire communities destroyed, and with the high debt burdens associated with recovery. And perhaps worst of all, with the understanding that the next Category 5 storm is likely to arrive sooner rather than later. What happens in high emissions countries does not stay in high emissions countries. The risks we face are not theoretical or abstract or far off or occasional. It's true that no corner of the earth is immune to the risk of climate change. Here in California, for example, wildfires and droughts represent major challenges. In the Bahamas, our geography and our size mean that we live with the knowledge that one well-placed storm can wipe out our economy and indeed much of our country. Hurricane Dorian alone in 2019 caused destruction worth 1/4 of our GDP, and it wasn't even focused on our capital city of Nassau. So we can't afford more summits or conferences with only smiles and good intentions. We need to get to work. Small as we are, we believe we have an important role to play in building solutions.
So as the Prime Minister would have said, and you can see he holds back no punches when he deals with his counterparts in the international community. Dorian was the turning point. Dorian was the last straw on the camel's back. We don't have time to let diplomacy rule or overtake what needs to be done. We need to have action. People's lives are dependent on it. The country's ability to be economically viable, to make sure that there's food security and energy security for its people so that they can have resilient livelihoods is critically important. So when we talk about climate change and climate-related impacts, it is up to our partners to do what is necessary to ensure that we are able to survive. These things they have agreed to do. They have said that they're going to provide level of financing and technology access to help us as they seek to address their need on the dependence of fossil fuel, because that is predominantly the main driver of climate change, our dependence on the use of fossil fuels. But it is having an all-over impact. The Prime Minister said, what we feel today, you will feel tomorrow. And the world has seen that. Fires throughout Europe, floods that are at unprecedented levels, winter storms that just come out of nowhere and just wreak havoc. These things, which were only things that we would have felt during the summer months, they're feeling year round. So now we're all sitting up, we're all taking note that climate change is not just a developing country issue, it's a developed country issue as well. But the developed countries have the weightier responsibility to change their habits, because it is what they're doing that's having an impact, that's working down and having an impact on small island states such as the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Islands.
Do you see any softening of their position to change their habits? Even though we see you talking about the fires and the droughts in Europe, but you look right next door here, and especially in California with all of the fires, and you also talked about food security, and we have the Strait of Hormuz blocked, and that has, along with everything else that's going on, the conflict between Iran and the United States and Israel will impact the economies, coupled with the climate change. We see evidence in what is happening to the weather systems. Are the industrial countries taking note? Are they softening their position?
And see, the thing is, like your parents would always tell you, it doesn't matter what the other people are doing in their homes. We need to do what we do in our homes for the benefit of our family. And that's the perspective that we need to take. The Bahamas cannot be driven blindly about what's going on with other people and things that we cannot affect change. Their people are going to vote for them. They're going to put their leaders in power. They're going to implement whatever platform of work that we have. But what do we then do? We have to look internally and say, well, how do we strengthen our food security systems? How do we shift from a fossil fuel-based to a more technology-driven society? These are things that we have an effect to change. So we have to focus on doing those things. And each and every one of us have a role to play in that. As parents, we need to expose and educate our children about the things that they're going to face when they graduate school, when they're going to go into that global market and how to get themselves. We as medical practitioners need to look look at what do we then address? How do we track the change in terms of the vectors that we're seeing? We never even heard of things like chikungunya before until it was here. And then we have to follow it and we have to see how it progresses. We also have to look at how do we then adapt to making sure life is sustainable for our elderly and our young with these shifting temperature experiences that we have. Creating programs of work that address the needs of the people, creating a resiliency within our country such that we are interconnected as islands that are functional. These are the things that we need to be. We need to work as a community of islands for one country. And that means everybody has to do their parts. Where we can farm, let's farm. Where we can enhance technology, let's go ahead and do that. Where we can educate our people to take advantages of the opportunity that our placement has, like what Batsmeen is doing, we should go ahead and do those sorts of things.
Do you feel that we understand the sense of urgency? And I'm talking about agriculture again and food security and energy efficiency, because we've been talking about self-sufficiency in agriculture from what people say King Hatchet was a hammer. And I have in recent times seen movement towards that. But as a people, as a Bahamian people, it's not just the government, it's just not the church, it's we having to put our shoulders and our hands to the wheel with diligence. Both of you, do you feel that it is important for Bahamians to apply more priorities in their commitment to make a difference? As you said, we can't look at what other countries are doing. What are we doing, starting with me?
Yeah. If I may, when we had COVID, the local farmers never had so much business. The chicken farmers, when the eggs went up, never had so much business. We know where we need to turn to when times get rough. What I want the Bahamians to appreciate, times are going to be rough for a long time. This isn't just going to be a short-term issue. Climate change is the long game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And us being able to build that resiliency over time to address these 400,000 plus people that will need food, that will need energy, that will need transportation to get them from point A to B, means that we all must work at this together as a community of people. This is nothing a government can do alone. It is nothing a private sector can do alone. All of us need to work together in order to achieve it. And we have the ability to do so. We are a strong, resilient people. We have come through a lot. Dorian showed us. It woke us up. It was a slap in the face and a kick in the gut to get ourselves and our act together, because what we saw then is going to be a repeat. We see what's going on with Jamaica, with Melissa right now. Our day may be coming. We see what we had to do in terms of evacuating our southern islands and bringing everybody out of the path of that hurricane. These are not one-offs. These are going to become the norms because we don't control the weather. We only respond to it.
Mr. Simmons, what is your response? And how does Batsmeen help, and what would you like the Bahamian people to know? Because both of you are saying a mouthful. Basically what you're saying, tourism is no longer the engine of our economy if we don't adjust, because a lot of times people may change their enemy versus their friend. And what I'm hearing you say, there must be a paradigm shift in the thinking of Bahamians. What must we be doing, Mr. Simmons?
As a people, we need to be fully aware of this climate change issue and what this is all about. Right now, the IPCC is preparing its what we call the 7th assessment report. The 3rd assessment report was released sometime early in 2000. And in that report, it was said that hurricanes, the intensity of hurricanes will increase. The frequency, we weren't too sure about that, but the intensity, we were sure. So Dorian was actually predicted by the IPCC more than a century ago. But people didn't pay much attention to it. There's clear evidence that we are seeing climate change. So when we say climate, a lot of people talk about global warming. No, it's climate change. You know, we're talking about temperatures. We're talking about differences in rainfall. We're talking about ocean temperatures. And humidity and all those other things. And so, you know, you don't look at And when you talk about global warming, you're only talking about the heat. But watch the winter that was in North America this winter. It was really it was a brutal winter, I would put it that way. So these changes are happening, and we need to be. But now it's here. It's home now. We have seen the Dorians in the region. We have seen the Melissa. I think it was in 2017. We have never seen a Category 5 hurricane in the Leeward Islands. We saw 2 within a week. So it's clear evidence. It's here. So those who are saying that it's not real, I don't know where they are, and they just not paying attention. As a people, we need now to look at other ways of taking care of ourselves. The tourism is kind of getting worn out a bit. We have now introduced what we call the blue economy. Okay, we have more ocean than most countries. Okay, and so we can look at how we can take advantage of that. We need to change to renewable energy. We need to get more into. We have solar energy every day. So we don't have to rely so much on the fossil fuel. And we can also look at other ways where we can, improve our way of life and not depend on the traditional way of doing things. Baxwin has taken on the vision of Baxwin, really, first and foremost.
Where did it come from, the vision?
The vision of Baxwin came from our founder, Mr. Robert Tarrant. The story is that, one day he paid a visit while I was still in the Met Office. He paid a visit to us, and he shared his vision with us. And when he left, we looked at each other and he said, this guy is serious. So we sat down, we discussed it among ourselves, and invited him back. He came back, he shared it, he showed us, and somebody questioned him, and he seemed to be on top. And then we realized, he's making sense, right? What his vision is to actually produce not only a meteorological watch office for the Bahamas, something that we don't have, but the idea is that to really generate products so that pilots, as they move through our airspace, would be able to see what's going on in real time. So they'll be able to avoid areas of high turbulence, severe thunderstorms, so they can do it easily without much of an issue. By doing that, we cut back on the carbon credit, on carbon emissions from the aircrafts that are actually moving through. His vision also opened up another new avenue for us as a people, for the government of the Bahamas, in taking advantage of our airspace. It's a very lucrative area that we can look at to derive funds in terms of the aircraft transversing through our airspace. So we're not only making it easier for aircrafts to move through by giving them good real-time weather information, but we also shortening their time in their flight. So by doing that, they burn less fuel through airspace, and everything and you have a much smoother flight. A lot of people know they fly, they don't like those turbulence and all of that. So people moving through our airspace, aircraft passengers as they move through our airspace, they have a smoother flight. We tried it, and that is one division that we at Baxwin are trying to do. So at Baxwin, what we are actually doing when it comes to climate change is that in cutting back on the carbon emission, we are actually lessening what goes on. And also, that's our contribution from this company. We are making that contribution to climate change, not only in the region, but also globally.
You know what? It's important to know the foundation of anything. And so when we come back, let's go and look at the wonderful technology that they're doing here, how it works, a little more on how it's going to benefit us. We gotta just celebrate trailblazers. We'll be back in a moment.
From Nassau to the out islands wide, 700 islands, one blue sky. The storm you never saw coming through, now we see it before it moves. Whether you know or whether you don't, black swans watching, that's the hope. From cockpit to farm to the hospital bed, the sky is no longer a mystery. Black swan, the Bahamas watching over you.
Have you heard about the Promise Unit? The Department of Social Services provides food assistance, housing assistance, uniform assistance, burial assistance, and financial assistance. Promise makes it easy. You can log on via cell phone, your computer, or your tablet. Sign up today at promise.gov.bs. Once you've registered and created a profile, you can call the Promise Customer Contact Center and speak with someone about any inquiries at 1-242-4-PROMISE. That's 242-477-6647.
You can now stay in tune with all things social services on any one of our social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, missed any of our Taking Social Services to the People programs? No worries. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Bahamas Heartbeat, to watch all of our programs and special content. Social Services is the heartbeat of the nation, taking our clients from dependency to self-sufficiency to economic empowerment.
Great leaders live in three tenses: past, the present, and the future. And it's important as a nation, if we are going to strengthen our future, protect our today, with the mindset that is determined to improve the quality of our living. So as we sit here in Baxwin's office, it's important to know the foundation. The foundation is generational, and the founder is a second generation leader who is being instrumental for transformation. The grandfather of Robert DePuch Karen is Sir Etienne DePuch, who was a black man. He married a white woman, but he was very instrumental in improving the quality of life for blacks. That's really uniting a country. And as Ms. Newbold said, climate change impacts everyone. It has no class. Life is key, not exempt. Town, not exempt. Black, not exempt. FNM, not exempt. PLP, COI, NEI, not exempt. It is important for us to hear the urgency that the Prime Minister and the professionals are sounding the alarm, because what we want to do is look at this picture and think about the generations. We now have this responsibility to preserve the generations. When we look at the Tribune, it's 125 years old because of a consciousness of generational thinking and a demonstrated commitment for improved quality of life. And so we heard the Prime Minister, Mr. Simmons, and he warned about, listen, we better start acting now. Since that speech, there's even been more serious storms. Speak to that.
Well, since that speech, the Prime Minister, he would have made that speech soon after Hurricane Dorian. But since that, we had a lot of us would have heard of Hurricane Beryl that actually devastated Grenada and some of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That was another Category 5 hurricane. And the devastation that took place in those islands was similar to what we saw in Abaco and Grand Bahama. Just last year, we had Melissa. Hurricane Melissa actually devastated portions of Jamaica. and it came through islands in the Bahamas. Not, it didn't have a serious impact as it had in Jamaica, but that was another category 5 hurricane. And these are these type of hurricanes that we have seen. So we can see between 2019 and 2025, which is about 6-year period, we've seen 3 of them. So this region cannot take one of those hurricanes every 2 years. As a people in the Caribbean, our CARICOM nations, our neighbors in the region, small islands, the cost of those hurricanes far exceeds our national budget. How are we supposed to live as a people when our national budget is actually being written off within a day? How are we supposed to live? So now, and then, the thing about it is that as soon as you begin to rebound, get back, another one comes. Abaco, clear signs of Dorian still exist in Abaco. That was 2019. That was now 6-7 years ago. And so, as a people, we really need to. It's called. They say we can do very little mitigation for them when they reach. We can build our homes better, and maybe the impact will not be as serious. But really, are we supposed to adapt to this? Well, that's the question. And how are we going to do it? So when you have our Prime Minister, he's out there, he's one of the leaders from small island developing states who are out there saying to the global community, guys, help us out here. And by that I mean, help to cut down on this this greenhouse gas emission that you guys are doing, because it impacts us as a people. That's the kind of help we're looking for. So we're looking for we're trying to get the attention of the world. And right now in the global community, in the IPCC, what has happened in our last election, we had small island developing states and developing countries around the world. We came together and we said, hey, we had enough, and we're going to make our voices heard. We're going to put more of our people in the leadership position in this panel. CARICOM countries got together. Dr. Del Thomas, a Bahamian, she was an author who was working along with the IPCC for many years. And we approached her. We said, listen, we need you on the bureau. She agreed. We went on the floor. We campaigned, and we campaigned the CARICOM way on the floor. And, and we got her elected. And we are proud. She's now a vice chair in the working group 2. She is a part of this meeting that we are having. And she's also one of the authors. As a matter of fact, she's a lead author.
When you say lead authors, explain it.
You have various levels of the working group 2 have to produce their portion of the assessment report. And there are several, the lead authors, I think you'll have more, I think we agreed to about 20 chapters or thereabouts in our book. And so what her job then is that you would have lead authors and you have just review authors and other people. She is one of the persons who would be responsible for maybe 1 or 2 chapters, and she would have almost the final say on what goes into these reports, into the report for that area. Of course, our area of expertise will be with small islands. So now small islands have a voice in all of this. This document now goes into the COP. The policymakers. This document is very important because from this document, global around the world, climate change policies are made because they gather information. There's nothing new. Everything is researched, peer reviewed. They use peer reviewed papers from around the world, and they actually put them together. And this document now that IPCC will put out is being used by policymakers from around the world to actually generate climate change policies. So what will be put in it, we are looking now to policymakers in the developed world to actually look at what was written in these reports, take it serious, and began to make some changes in their countries so that the greenhouse gas emissions and the devastation we face from climate change would not be so devastating. One of the reports we put out was the 2.5. Okay, so we wanted to avoid increase in global temperatures by 2.5 degrees. Well, it don't look as if we're going to achieve that, but we haven't given up on it. Dr. Thomas, she was one of the authors in that report also. She featured prominently in that report. So she's a Bahamian out there who's in the international climate change community, fighting not only for the Bahamas, but also for small island developing states around the world. And she's well known around the world for doing that.
Well, it sounds, it really sounds overbearing, but there's some hope in there because, Ms. Newbold, you were talking earlier about the opportunities and how we can adjust with technology and improve the quality of life.
And as Ms. Simmons would have said, this report that this working group 2 is going to be focused on is on vulnerability and adaptation. So it will be looking at the issues that are making countries more vulnerable to climate change and what the adaptive undertakings that would be required for them to make. The 1.5 degree limit was put in place so as to allow nations to be able to continue to strive. This number was identified particularly for small island developing states because we are an island. There is no mountain to run to if the sea level continues to rise. So this was peculiar to us as well. The 2 degrees was what we all globally agreed to as the post-industrial age, keeping the temperature below 2 degrees below what was then the temperature at that time. And by 2050, we were supposed to be at a net zero for emissions. Now, all of that has not worked out the way we had all planned and we'd hoped for. But what it does still require is that nations such as ours have to adapt. And that means that we have to adapt using the best available technologies that are available to us. And that means going beyond our traditional ways of doing things. Tradition took us as far as it could, but now we have to advance ourselves. That means that our educational system must prepare our students as they go out into the global world to utilize those tools to make the change. So before, when we all could have put a seed in the ground and plant, but now we're facing issues where the soil is too salty, the heat is too much for the plants to grow, the water is too scarce. So now we're looking at issues like using hydroponics or aquaponics, even for our fisheries. Right now, the ocean acidification is affecting our coral reefs. We even have the coral tissue loss disease that's out there that's just eating its way throughout the Caribbean, and nobody knows if it's a virus, a fungus, a bacteria. We do not know, but we're finding ways and means to adjust. We're identifying corals that are responding more strongly to it. It's not being overtaken by it, and seeing if we can harvest them and grow them and get their genetics to be able to reproduce them. So it's all about using the tools and the science and the understanding that we have to better the environment, to use what we have to advance what it is that we need. Right now, the Climate Change Unit, in conjunction with the United Nations, various agencies are looking to advance agricultural and fisheries projects for our Bahamian people. So we're going to North Andros and we're looking at what the farmers need and what their experiences, and we're going to the South and we're looking at what they need and what they're experiencing, but not only to just identify the problem, but to also look at the issues of what is needed to address it. The key fundamental thing is, where is the funds? We know what the problem is, but where is the funding to address it? Under these UN climate change agreements and utilizing the output from the report, it will quantify the damage that's being done, the impact that is being experienced, and it then would lead into negotiating of the terms and conditions for the financial support. We have those financial supports that are coming into the country, and we need to direct them to farmers. But we can only direct them to true farmers, not sometime farmers, not play farmers. Because food security, if a nation cannot thrive by virtue of its health, it will not survive, no matter what else surrounds it. So getting on the issue of food is important, as well as it is for energy. As Mr. Simmons would have said, the sun comes up every day. We depend on tankers to bring fuel to this country. We are a small country. When fuel becomes scarce, two things happen. The price increases and they sell to the highest bidder. We can't compete in a market with 400,000 people. So what we need to do is to switch to solar, switch to wind where it's applicable, switch to anything like OTAC where we're using the ocean temperature difference. Everybody goes.
Is natural gas an option?
Natural gas is still a byproduct of fossil fuel. If you don't have fossil fuel, you can't have natural gas. You can't have natural gas without fossil fuel. So they're interlinked. And while there might be an intermediary response to it, it is not a sustainable one. So I want to draw Bahamas' attention to Bahamas. When you go to Bahamas, it's always cold. Bahamas doesn't use fossil fuel for its air conditioning. It uses OTAC. It uses the temperature difference.
What is OTAC?
It's ocean thermal energy conversion. It's the temperature difference between, like when we go into the sea sometimes, when you're close to the land, the water's warm, and you go out, it gets cooler. That temperature difference is what OTAC is about. That is what they're utilizing by virtue of the temperature of the water at the top, because they're drilling down, and then 100 feet different. The degrees and change is very dramatic, and they can use that for energy. They use that technology in Japan all the time for their aquaponics, for the air conditioning, for their hospitals and their hotels. We're saying we're going to do the same. There are projects that are already in play targeting islands like Eleuthera and Andros for these new energy conversion technologies, as well as for the farming and the fishing industry. We cannot control the fact that hurricanes come. We can't control the fact that insurers don't want to insure you even if you're willing to pay because of the risk of payout when the hurricanes do come. So looking at how we can build in a level of resilience. Before, when we talked about blacks and whites and Africans never had funerals. You died, they put you in a hole. They didn't even bury you in clothes because that was too valuable a commodity. You was already dying. And then we came up and we had what we have now. We had ASU, and then we had lodges. And their job was to give you a respectful interment so that your people could put you down with dignity. We know as a people how to save. We know how to use the little that we have as communities and to pool that in order to benefit everybody. And what we're saying is, let's use what we know that works and not always have to look outside for help, outside for loans, outside to go and borrow money, because these borrowing issues are what are going to weigh us down, because when you borrow, you have to pay back, and you don't always have the opportunity to pay back. The government just bought back $300 million worth of debt for $125 million to pump back into our conservation programs to address the impacts that are going on in our marine environment. But that was an opportunity that we had to fight for. It didn't happen yesterday. It took years of negotiations to get that. So these things that we highlight are important. We got a $65 million water project from the GCF. That wasn't a one-off, one day. That was 3 years of hard work and labor and negotiations to get that funds applied to the Bahamas, of which 49% was a grant and the other 51% was a loan. But those aren't things that we can live and thrive off of. We have to create solutions at home that are implemented by our people, that are maintained by our people, that are managed by our people, because nobody's going to take better care of us than ourselves.
I wish I could stay up a little longer, but we have just a few minutes left in this program. Final thoughts coming up in a moment.
You can now stay in tune with all things social services on any one of our social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, missed any of our Taking Social Services to the People programs? No worries. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Bahamas Heartbeat, to watch all of our programs and special content. Social services is the heartbeat of the nation, taking our clients from dependency to self-sufficiency to economic empowerment.
Have you heard about the Promise Unit? The Department of Social Services provides food assistance, housing assistance, uniform assistance, burial assistance, and financial assistance. Promise makes it easy. You can log on via cell phone, your computer, or your tablet. Sign up today at promise.gov.bs. Once you've registered and created a profile, you can call the Promise Customer Contact Center and speak with someone about any inquiries at 1-242-4-PROMISE. That's 242-477-6647.
Well, it's been great talking to you all. What is your final advice?
I want to leave the Bahamian people with 2 words: diversification and adaptability. We are a nation that's more than 50 years old. We must move into the 21st century, and it will require change on our part. We cannot continue to do what we did in the past, looking forward, going into the future. So we have to be adaptable, and we have to diversify what it is that we do and how we do it. And only then will we be, and we will continue to be, a thriving community of people and a nation that's worthy to have a voice on the global scale, without which we will be silent and we will go into the night. So I want our people to think of that. We as Bahamian, what does that mean?
When you say we, I want you to keep that thought in terms of go into the night. You know, I used to say for a long time that, once we were inhabited by the Arawaks and they're not here anymore. And we seem to have a mindset, when the hurricanes are coming, we run to the lumber stores when it's about to close and the hurricane is almost here. It's a mindset of last minute and not really anticipating the consequences of the future. And because we missed a hit last hurricane season, we expect the same will happen. So how do we address that mindset?
I guess I want to think about it in the general vernacular, like we talk about. When Christmas comes, I got to get my new weave done. I got to get my new nails done. We know how to call up those individuals, those technicians, to get us prepared and ready for that event that we want to come to. It's the same thing, the same process. As Bahamian women, those of us who are single, we know that we have children to feed. We know we need a home to be prepared for. We know we have to take care of ourselves and our own. We need to do what is necessary to ensure that. We need to put aside, squirrel away, whatever little amount of funds that we can to ensure that our people and ourselves are capable of thriving. If we are a family, with a nuclear family, with a husband and a wife, we are blessed to have the support and the balance that both can bring to that family. We need to use that to our advantage, to groom our young boys to be men, to be strong, to take control of their lives, to have a plan, right? It's not about the games. It's not about even being in a particular educational track. You got to be a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief. That's not what it's about. It's about how you can make your contribution to the development of your nation. There are niches. It's about empowering entrepreneurs to take advantage of opportunities. We no longer need to look external to advance ourselves. We have opportunities, we have the resources internally. Let's use it, let's take hold of it, let's mold it and make it what we need it to be that suits us. Our nation is not a cookie cutter result. We are unique. Our placement by God is unique. We are the only nation in the world you can see from space. You can't get confused if you're lost and you reach planet Earth. That aqua blue spot there, that's the Bahamas. And it's that uniqueness that we need to take ownership of. As a people, we need to thrive. We need to work together and strengthen ourselves.
Mr. Simmons.
And I'm to come behind that. Before I respond, I just want to say I made an error with I said 2.5. It's actually 1.5 degrees. 2.5 degrees, we cannot handle that, or we would be wiped out. So the report was really the 1.5 degree. That's what it was. The evidence is there. If you want to open your eyes and see, data is available in country and around the world. Climate is changing. And when we talk about climate, like I said, we talk about all aspects of the weather. It's changing a lot. As a people, especially from small island states like ours, we are one of the most vulnerable countries in the world when it comes to climate change. And we need to change and we need to adapt. Technologies are coming on where we can move away from the source of energy that we use. God has blessed us with 365 days, more than 300 days of sunshine. we need to learn how to harness the energy that God has given us for free and use it and use it. That can help us a lot. We have more ocean than most places. We need to really get on board in terms of agriculture, how we grow our food, and get more into the hydroponics where you actually create an environment where you don't have to worry about planting your crops and just when you're about ready for harvest, along come a hurricane and write it off. So these are the things we need to look at, taking advantage of the modern technologies that's becoming available to us more and more every day. So that we now can, as a people, adapt. The hurricanes are coming. We live in a zone. We live in a Abaco really see more hurricanes than anywhere else in this hemisphere. Okay, so we know these islands are really, hurricanes has passed them almost every year. So we have to realize where we live, and we have to adapt. We have to prepare ourselves for these things, and we don't prepare when a hurricane watch or hurricane warning is at least have been released. You need to prepare in advance. June 1st, you must be prepared for any hurricane that can actually pass through our area. So you have to do what is necessary. And there are many ways to do that. The disaster risk management, they assist in giving tips on how these things are done. And you need to start paying more attention and really start preparing yourself in terms of your food, protecting your properties, how you can best protect your properties, and have some food around and water in the event that you're hit by a hurricane.
Well, two visionaries, two qualified professionals. And I think if I were to sum it all up, preparation means to make ready. What they're saying is that we have to make ourselves ready for the change. We cannot have sovereignty without ownership and without the quality of life, and that's based on the decisions we make. Every decision we make has a consequence tomorrow. And so at Social Services, we continuously say, listen, we have a responsibility to move from dependency to self-sufficiency to economic empowerment. You talked about not depending on others, not to be guided by external influences if it's in conflict with the values that we know that we get from the source of life. So, I mean, there's a sovereign God who's not surprised by natural disasters or climate change, but it's for us to respond by submitting to the principles of success. I have every confidence that this country is going to be the greatest little country in the world because not only are we confronting the issues, we're going to respond and submit to it. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Production of the Ministry of Social Services, Information and Broadcasting, the heartbeat of the nation, where we move our clients from dependency to self-sufficiency to economic empowerment.